All right. We are here today with Wake Up Call, the podcast. I'm your host, Christina Previtt, and joining me today is Jigisha, also known as Gigi Thakor. She is a financial advisor and insurance broker, and she's self-employed. She's the owner of ShantiNow Financial. Welcome, Gigi.
Thank you for having me, Christina.
Thank you for saying yes.
Of course.
We were just talking about the name of your company, Shanti. I love that. Can you explain to us again, though, what that is?
Yeah, Shanti in Sanskrit means peace. We believe that you should have peace with your money.
Yes, and so few of us do, though.
Yes, it's usually the reason people get divorced. People are unhappy and depressed, unfortunately. So we're trying to change all that.
Causes a lot of stress too.
That's right. That's right.
So I want to get into your personal background and ask you a lot of nosy questions. But before I do that, it just seems like a natural place to talk a little bit about your business and what you really do. What does a financial advisor do? I never really know. I feel like that's just a broad term, but maybe it does actually mean something specific.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's multiple things that we do. It depends on where you are in your financial life, if you will, right? Are you at the point where you need to get out of debt? We actually just, because of COVID, we launched a whole new segment that segment of the business that we never really focused on before. But if you need debt management, if we need help with getting out of debt, we can help you with that. If you need help saving, we can help you with that. That's all in the same category. If you need help with investments, you have money, you've saved money, now you want your money to work for you, we can help you with that. Beyond that, you need help, as a business owner, you need help with tax planning. You need to figure out how to start putting money towards things that your employees need, that you need, versus paying the government. We do a lot of that.
Yes. I don't like to give the government my money.
Who does?
Yeah, right. Who does? So when did you start your business, Shanti?
So yeah, I started about 5 years ago. Prior to that, I worked at a bigger firm with a senior advisor, a male senior advisor. Majority of the people in this business are men, as you may already know.
Yeah, I've not kind of noticed that.
Yeah. So I started the business, I started in this sector about 12 years ago. And then, after I had my kids, I decided to leave when my senior advisor said I needed to work 80 hours a week and, didn't really need to spend time with my baby and my kids.
Well, I feel like that's prevalent in a lot of industries. There's just certain industries. Like I know doctors can work really long, crazy hours, and lawyers obviously do too. And it's kind of interesting. I've talked about this with other people, how women have this tricky balance of, do I throw myself into my career and work, or do I give my children attention so that maybe I could be a good mom and they know who I am? And why can't we have both? It's, I guess, sort of an age-old question, but it sounds like the answer for you was, I'm going to go start my own business and I'm going to dictate my own schedule.
That's right. I felt, and during that position, when I was in that position, I felt like the only way for me to have both was not to work 80 hours a week, which meant that I was no longer going to be an associate, in the firm that I was with. And so I left, which was a scary thing. I think it's always scary to leave behind what you've built for, whatever, 5+ years, and then all of a sudden start something new. But I'm glad I did that. It was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Well, when you were there before having kids, were you working the crazy hours?
I was, and I didn't mind. I mean, I'm a hard worker. I love what I do. It wasn't a problem then, but and when I was dating my husband, he worked all the time as well. So it wasn't a problem. Once we had a family and I genuinely wanted to be home with the kids, that's when it became a problem,
Yeah. And before you had kids, though, did you ever think, what am I going to do when I have kids? Or was it just not really on your radar?
No, it's really funny that you said that because, I'm a financial planner, a financial advisor. So I actually had planned to stay home with my son for 5 years. So I had saved enough. I had saved enough to be able to live without working for 5 years.
Wow. Nobody does that.
It's you can do that when you don't have a life. You work 80 hours a week.
Well, yeah, but you also prioritize that because I'm a huge fan of Sex and the City. And if anybody watched that show, you remember the episode when Carrie wanted to buy a house and realized that she had spent all of her money on shoes and she had no savings. And I think there are a lot of Carrie Bradshaws out there. I'm going to stay mum on whether I am or not, but there's a lot of that going around, isn't there?
Absolutely. So I was one of them. My first job out of college, I made more money than my parents had made, combined in a year. Like it was just, I probably made three times, and it was not a lot of money to just give you, a snapshot of what that was. But so I used to go every Friday. I would strut down, Manhattan, and I'd go and I'm like, I work so hard, and I'd go and buy my, whatever $100 pair of shoes or whatever it was, and I'd go home and I'd be really happy because I bought these shoes. And I'd go home and I'd look at them and I'd be like, oh my God, why did I spend this much money? And I was like, okay. And oftentimes I would go back and return those same shoes like the following Monday.
Buyer's remorse.
Yeah, because that like joy of like, oh, I worked so hard for this and now I bought this was gone by Monday. I'm like, why did I do this?
It's
So
true. I mean, I still have clothes with the tags on them, and I know I'm not the only one, but
we
it's so ridiculous.
we're all there. So I'm a recovering Carrie Bradshaw. I just figured a way out. I just figured, okay, if I really want to have money, it's okay to buy things, right? But if you don't really love it and you don't really need it, then go return it.
Yeah.
If you've gotten off that high, if you will.
Yeah. Or they have interesting stuff right now that I was just talking to a friend about, like Rent the Runway. And they have other businesses like this where you can just kind of borrow clothes and wear it for a while. I mean, it might sound a little creepy, but I don't know, you could just use it until you're sick of it and then you just return it. So, and high-end stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because think about it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get tired of stuff after a couple of
I
months.
do.
I'm like, okay, I'm ready for a new whatever it is, right? And
I
now I
do.
donate the clothes. But yeah, if I bought something that was thousands of dollars, I'd feel really guilty about donating it like a couple of months later, right?
Well, I'll tell you a secret, you and everybody who's listening or watching. So this shirt that I have on right now, I don't even know what brand it is. It's a beautiful shirt.
I love this shirt.
Thank you. I wish I had looked at the tag before I put it on. So, little secret, this shirt still has the tag on it. And the reason for that is because I bought a whole bunch of beautiful high-end blouses from Nordstrom. I hope Nordstrom isn't watching, but I bought them from Nordstrom. I'm going to use them to record all my podcasts, and then I'm going to return them all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't think I will be able to keep up these shenanigans for very long because Nordstrom will flag me at some point. They'll be like, why does this lady keep buying like 10 Veronica Beard blouses and then returning them a week later? So, and I have no shame right now, but the way I look at it, it's like, if I was Kim Kardashian, I would go to a photo shoot and they would just give me clothes to wear. Right. And then you just leave. But I'm not Kim Kardashian, not yet anyway. So I have to, make lemonade, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't know. Can you help women who come to you and say, look, I have expensive tastes. I'm, making X amount of dollars. It's a good amount, but not enough to really buy the stuff that I want. Can you work with them to maybe kind of earmark a certain amount of money so that they can have those luxuries, I guess, if
Yeah,
they want?
absolutely. Absolutely. We work with a lot of women. So majority of these women who I'm talking about who are, thousands and thousands of dollars in credit card debt, they make six figures. These are not, majority of them. They're not people who are making, small amounts of money. And they have expensive tastes, and that is why they are thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. So, a lot of it, and we work with them, but we also recommend that they have a therapist because there's a reason why you're doing this. It's beyond my scope. There's a reason why you're spending, $30,000, $50,000, whatever it is, and there's no need for it, right? It's different when you're as a result of the pandemics, a lot of people have had to put things on their credit card, right? Basic necessities like food, shelter, right? Things like that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about women who just, keep spending because it's that the same thing, I just said, right? It's that high. It makes you feel good. You did something, right? You were able to buy this. Look at it's the power, the control that I have over my life, right? When other things in life don't, when it doesn't feel like you have control over other parts of your life, right? So that's
Yeah.
so
And
that's part of it.
I think unfortunately the world that we live in too, where we sort of measure success by what you can buy.
Yeah.
So if I can have the red bottom, like Louboutin shoes, at least to the outside world, I look like I'm doing pretty damn good. And I'm probably doing better than someone who doesn't have those. But you never really know, because someone could have a ton of credit card debt that they can't pay to buy that stuff to look successful.
So absolutely. So I'll tell you, and we have clients that make a lot of money. Like our largest client makes 30 million plus. So that client that makes 30 million plus does not buy Louis Vuitton shoes. Does
What?
not.
Really?
Yeah, really. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't have a comfortable life by any means, but I'm just saying they are savers. They like to save their money. Majority of the clients that we have that are millionaires. Have you ever read that book? It's called The Millionaire Next Door.
No.
And in that book, so whoever's listening should go read that book, right? In that book, they actually talk about the fact that majority of the millionaires are your average Joe Schmo. Like you won't know that they're millionaires, right? They're the
Yeah.
ones clipping the coupons. They're the ones that are looking for the deals. And then people who you just see spending and spending tend not to have a lot of money because they're spending all their money, right?
Yeah, they're not saving it. But isn't the whole point of having all the money so that you can spend some of it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong. I think there's a fine balance, right? There's groups of people who think that you should save everything. And I certainly have clients who feel that way. We usually are just do insurance for them because they know everything. They know how to save, they know how to do this, they know how to do that. I'm like, that's fine. You do you.
Yeah.
The challenge with some of those people is that, they're saving almost to their demise. Like they'll be eating ramen noodles, and these people have families and and working like crazy, and I'm like, you have to enjoy life. Like the whole point of being given this life is so you can enjoy, right? I'm not saying spend frivolously, like we know a lot of people in America do, and I'm not
Mhm.
saying that you need to scrimp and save every single dime that you make. There's a happy balance between those two extremes, right, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, as a divorce lawyer, I've seen plenty of couples who had a lot of credit card debt, and sometimes the ones that would really surprise me were the people that would make a combined income of 500,000, yet they would have $100,000 or more of credit card debt. And I'd always think to myself, how in the hell does that happen? Like, was the 500K not enough? You still needed to dip into the credit cards. And I was making, am making less than that. So to me, I was like, that seems like so much money. Why would you need to use credit cards on that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So once you get to a certain income level, and I've had to be very cautious about this, right? Once you go to the next level, if you will, right, then you start comparing. So for example, they'll say, try not to be the person on the block where you have the biggest house, right? Because first of all, your house will never sell for what the rest like if you have the biggest
Yeah.
house on the block, right, and your house in theory should be selling for 5 million. I'm just throwing random numbers out there, right? But the rest of your house, but the rest of the homes are selling for 500. Guess what? Your house is not
Yeah.
going to sell for 5 million, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So you don't want to be that person that's you have to be cautious, I guess, when you're going to the next level. Like try not to compare yourself, right? Your neighbor has the new shiny whatever. You don't need the new shiny whatever, right? Their circumstance can be totally different than yours.
Yeah. Well, you just burst my bubble.
Oh,
We'll have to talk more. No, I get what you're saying. I mean, and I think things are sort of proportional because if you make 100,000 and you can go out and, I don't know, spend $500 on clothes, that could seem like a lot to you, but then, you get Jeff Bezos who, $500, he probably spends more than on a tie. So, but it's different because he can afford it, and it's like such a small fraction of what he actually has as available income than someone who's making a lot less.
Right.
And I like that you said you recommend people go to therapy. Do they get upset? Do they get offended?
Um, I have had to tell people that, and I say it nicely, as I try to say everything very nicely. You know, sometimes I tell people that this is beyond my scope of where I'm able to help you, because this need to spend money has nothing to do with what I'm trying to help you with, really, right? I mean, there's a reason why you feel like you need to spend thousands of dollars on whatever it is. Like, I can't help you with that.
Yeah.
There's something deep inside of you that's going on. And you need to figure that out either by yourself or with the help of someone else. Right. But we
Yeah.
can help you once you've made the decision. Okay, you're right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to keep spending and not have anything for emergencies. Like, we all lived through March, right? There were people who didn't, and to this day there are still people that don't have, at least 3 to 6 months of what they should have in their bank accounts, just in case.
Yes, I know. I think a lot of people, though, when you get accustomed to this habit of just spending, like for instance, I know so many people that get Starbucks every day. They might spend between 100 and $200 a month on Starbucks. And when you really start evaluating your budget, you realize, well, if I just didn't go to Starbucks every day, that's an extra $100 or $200 a month. And where else am I doing that?
Yeah, so there's a guy who wrote a book, David Bach, I think is his name, and he wrote this book, and in there he called it the Latte Factor, right? So look at how much money you're spending on your lattes, and let's just say it's $5, which is probably about right.
Yeah.
$5 a day times 5 days, right? That's $25 times four. That's $100 every month that you're just spending on coffee. We're not even talking about dinner or lunch or anything else. So if you can just take that and put it towards your savings, put it towards your IRA, put it towards your investments, whatever, right? We're not talking big amounts of money, just small changes that everyone could be making, right? Instead of, going to Starbucks, just grab a cup of coffee at home, right?
Yeah.
Make your own coffee. I mean, I think in some sense with the pandemic, a lot of people have been forced to do that, right? Because for a while everything was shut down, and that habit of going to Starbucks or going to wherever your local coffee shop or whatever, which by the way needs your support at this point, right? But that habit is no longer there for a lot of people, or it shouldn't be there, right? It's not
Yeah.
necessary.
There was a book, I never read it, but it's got a great title. You've probably heard of it. Young, Fabulous, and Broke.
Oh yeah, I haven't read that one either, but yes.
Well, I mean, the premise behind the book is how there's these young, I guess, yuppies. I don't even know if that's a relevant term anymore, but
Yeah.
young-ish professionals that are coming into their own, and they're starting to make more money, and they're broke though, because they're spending it. They're spending it on all this luxury stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And do you see a lot of people like that?
I actually don't see a lot of young people that are spending a lot of money on young people. I think for the most part are a little bit more conservative. They've seen their parents lose money. They've gone through some of the people that I see spending the most money are usually in their like 30s, 40s. That's where I see a lot of people spending money. But yeah, I mean, I gave you my own example. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the first time I realized I was making so much money, which really in retrospect was very little money, right? But
It was the most you ever made
oh gosh.
at the time.
At that time, Oh, my first job out of college, I think I was like making 35,000. I mean, and I thought that was so much money. And now, like, 35,000 seems like, I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, how did I even survive? Right?
Yeah.
Like, how did I
Yeah.
live on that? But from that point, because I didn't spend, or I did spend frivolously, I just returned it, right? But because
Yeah.
I did that, a couple of years later, I saved all that money and I bought a property. So it worked out.
Well, that was smart. That can cause a lot of problems in relationships, which obviously I see all the time is a spender versus a saver.
Yep.
But I want to go I want to dig into your personal life, Gigi.
Take away, take away. I'm an open book.
So you said that you had been in the financial business for about 12 years.
Yep.
So what did you do before that?
Before that, I was in real estate. That's where I met my husband, who's also in real estate. I was a realtor. So I bought my house. I mentioned I worked in Manhattan, and then I bought my property, which happened to be a 2-family property. And every month, my tenant was paying me rent, and I was like, "Oh, this is it. This is what I was meant to do in life." So I went and became a realtor, and I was going to be a big, I was going to have lots of properties and all this. Well, the reality of having lots of properties, and we have 2 tenants right now. The reality of that is it's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's what I
You know,
hear.
unless you have a management company, and then if you have a management company, they're taking well, not a big, but they're taking a percentage of it, which cuts into your profitability, right?
How much do they
Um,
normally take?
I think they take 15 to 18% depending on what part of the country that you're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've always heard that owning properties and being a landlord isn't worth the money or the trouble because people always say you just sort of break even.
Yeah. So that's where, I didn't pursue that, because that's exactly what I found. You're constantly dumping more money into it, right? Something always needs to be fixed. It's just the reality of life. Your faucet isn't going to last forever. The toilet isn't going to last forever. And there's so many moving parts that and even we still own this property and we're still putting money into it. We're making money because, I bought it, however many years ago, 2003 or whatever, right? So we're making money on it, but we're not buying more property because it doesn't make financial sense to me. Like, I can just take that same amount of money and invest it in the market and make more money and have less headache, right? Like, I don't have to worry about somebody calling me up because their toilet is broken or their
Yeah.
sink is leaking or whatever. But
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, I guess it starts to pay off, I guess, after the house is paid off. And then whatever rent you're getting, it's just yours.
Well, I think I also know a lot of clients because I came from real estate, I have a lot of clients who are real estate developers and things like that, right? So it can work for you. It has worked out for a lot of them. They just take the money. They're flippers for the most part. They buy a property for whatever, let's say 300,000. They dump 50 to 100,000 into it, and then they sell it for 500,000. So they made a quick $100,000 right there, right?
Yeah, that takes a lot of capital up front though.
It does. But a lot of the times you can get that $300,000 home is mortgaged, right? And then you have to have that 150 to 100, or you can take equity out of the property, which usually there is, depending on, what deal you get. So it can be done. So a lot of these guys that own multiple properties are making money. I just I don't know if it's worth it for me. That's always a question that I ask, would I rather do that or make money in the market? And my answer has always been to make money in the market, just because
Yeah.
it's less work for me. I already have a business. I don't need another
Yeah.
one.
And that's your thing, you have to love it.
Yeah.
If you don't love it, it just feels like work. So you did what was the job that you had when you were making 35,000 and you thought you were rich and you bought all the shoes and then returned them?
Yeah. I started off as an assistant in the research department. I was doing research for a television company. And from that point, yeah, that was my major in college. I wanted to be, it was media. I really wanted to work for MTV. I worked for VOD, which is Video on Demand. In Demand is the name of the company. So I started off as an assistant, then I became an analyst, and then I left as a senior analyst. And yeah,
What happened to that dream?
I'm glad I had that experience because it taught me a lot. I do a ton of analysis right now, right? I learned Excel, all that great stuff. So I'm so glad I had that experience, but I was bored out of my mind at that job.
Really? Well, you were doing, it doesn't sound like you were doing creative work. Did you want to do creative work?
I didn't know what, like many 20-year-olds, I didn't know what I wanted to do with life. I was like, okay, I've graduated college. I need to go find a job. I was trying to find myself. I went back, went back to school at NYU. I got this thing in real estate. And I really thought I was going to be a big developer at some point, and just, it didn't make financial sense to me. And that's the thing. Like I've always looked at the numbers every month. I was crazy when I didn't have kids and all this other stuff. Like I used to write down we'd put a quarter in the machine, and I would go back and write down that I put a quarter in the machine. And my husband, one time he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I just put a quarter in the machine." He's like, "Yeah?" I said, "I got to write that down." He's like, "Oh my God." I'm surprised he didn't run away then, but
You must have had some other redeeming qualities.
clearly. Because looking back, I'm like, I may have ran away from that person.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he kind of liked it.
Yeah, he's very structured. So he probably liked that I was.
I like that you say structured. I was thinking more OCD, but tomato, tomato. Are you like extremely neat and organized? Like, are
Oh,
you
God.
one of those people you open the pantry and everything's lined up?
Oh, we wish I was like that.
Okay.
My husband wishes I was like that. No, I'm really OCD about money, and that it ends right about there. Everything else is kind of like,
But it has to be organized, like in your head. There has to be some order to it all.
yeah,
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 that's probably good.
yeah,
So MTV dreams put aside, and then you did the real estate thing.
yeah.
But
That was
it sounds like you didn't love that either.
real estate was hard. So especially, the thing about, and most people don't think about this, but when you're in real estate doing this full time and you're 100% commission, it's really hard to get another loan, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have a ton of equity in your property, which, I did until 2008 when the whole crash happened, right? So if you don't have a ton of equity in the property, and you're working as an independent contractor, banks aren't lining up to give you loans, right? So that was the
Yeah.
issue with the real estate dream. And at the end of the day, it's like I said, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to manage and manage people, because you're managing the tenants, right? And manage the property as well. So maintain the property as well.
Yeah, I'd rather manage the property than the people.
I think most of us would agree with that.
A little more predictable, easy to work with. So then how did you come up with the bright idea of being a financial advisor? And did you already have the credentials? So you had to go back to school, or?
Yeah, so no, I came up with the brilliant idea because 2008 had happened, and we realized that while I was in real estate, so there was a guy that was making $50,000. That's what he, doing whatever he was doing. I think he was a manager somewhere. He's making $50,000, and he was trying to buy a home for $500,000. And I said to him, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't buy a house for $500,000 when you're only making 50,000. I said, this is how much you're going to get. And I broke it down for him, what should have happened with his mortgage guy. I broke it down for him. And I said, just think about it. Like, all of your money is going to go, right? You're going to spend all your money on the mortgage, the lights, whatever. Like, how are you going to pay for anything else? How are you going to pay for the clothes on your back, right? The food, out. Like, how are you going to pay for all that? He just looked at me dumbfounded, and he's like, I don't know, but this piece of paper here says that I can buy a house for $500,000. I was like, oh my gosh, I just told you that you shouldn't, and you're like telling me this. And he's like, well, if you don't want to sell me the house, someone else will. And I'm like, oh my God.
So you had a moral dilemma.
I'm like, this guy's a freaking lunatic, right? And so this is the light bulb went off, that I'm like, people just don't understand the basics of money. if you're making this much money, you can't have all of it go into housing. You need
Did
to
he buy it?
Unfortunately, he did buy a house through me. I convinced him not to buy the $500,000 home. He bought a house for $300,000, which was probably still a little bit of a stretch because he was the only one working, and $50,000 to buy a home in New Jersey, and live and do all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, he ended up losing his house,
Aw.
a couple of years later, right? Which
Well, this is that period of time when they were just giving out these ridiculous loans. I don't remember all the details about it. There was a great movie on it. Can't
yeah,
remember the
I think
name
I
of
know
that
what
either.
yeah, but this was the
That
period.
explained why the real estate market bottomed out. But maybe you could just give a little more explanation. But they were giving out these loans to people that really couldn't afford them. But what did they have a variable interest rate? Did something happen where there was a balloon payment or something and the people just couldn't pay it? And so they would foreclose.
Yeah, that was the one of the many reasons. A lot of these guys been given the should have never been given the mortgage, because the other thing that people don't talk about when they're buying homes, which I know there's a big surge of people looking for homes right now, right, in the millennial population. The other issue is that things break. You know how much it
Yeah.
is to replace a roof. All that stuff
Mhm.
is expensive. So if you don't have that, you're gonna lose in this, like, you're gonna have leaky roof, and it's a nightmare. So
And you can't control it because when it happens, it happens. And it always happens at an inconvenient time, right? Because there's never a convenient time.
no.
And you're like, shit, now I got to replace the air conditioner or the furnace or, a tree fell on my house or whatever. And you're stuck with it. I rent. So I've always said I think owning is totally overrated, but I'm single. I don't have kids. So maybe I would feel differently under those circumstances, but I've always said I just think that maybe renting is or owning isn't really what it's cracked up to be because of that.
No, I think there's an argument to be made, in New Jersey, where the property taxes are really high, that it may not make sense for everyone to own. On the flip side, you can look at it and say, well, you're paying towards housing, right? So you're paying a certain amount towards housing. Why don't you take that same amount and put it towards your own equity in your own home, right? Versus paying someone else's mortgage, because that's what my tenants are doing right now, right? They're essentially paying my mortgage for that property.
Yeah, that's the argument. But if something breaks, you have to fix it. They don't. They don't even have to call the repair person. They don't have to. They can sit on the couch and say, Gigi, when are you sending over the repair guy? And
Absolutely, absolutely, and those things happen, right? But when you crunch the numbers and you look, right, because I have this discussion with my husband all the time, because there was a time when I was like, let's buy more property, and he's like, why? He's like, so I can go and fix something. No, thank you. um
yeah,
but yeah, I think you're right. There's if you don't want to fix stuff, if you don't want to be bothered with all that, then yes, don't own a property, right? But on the flip side of that, like, just know that every month you're paying whatever it is, whether it's a small amount, 1,000, or a big amount, 5,000, whatever the number is, right? Anywhere between there, you're paying that no matter what, because you need a place to live. So you
yeah.
either pay it towards equity in your own home, or you pay it towards someone else's mortgage. So
Well,
it's
the only example that I ever give is when the real estate market tanked and people were stuck in homes that their the equity tanked and they were upside down.
yep.
And that wasn't really through any fault of their own. So that's sort of what I always think about is, well, people do have this idea that they're building equity, and probably it's more likely that you are. But then how can you ever predict something like that would happen again?
You can't predict stuff like that, right? There are people who bought their homes worth tons of money, right? And then something horrible happened, like Sandy Hook, for example, right?
Yeah.
Those people were not going to be able to sell their property for what it was worth prior to that incident happening. Absolutely. Things like that happened. But if you look at a whole, right? Because we're looking
Mhm.
at it's kind of, I look at numbers all day. So I look at, that's how I make decisions. If you look at the broad base of numbers, right? Majority of the people will make money on their property. Will everyone make money on their property? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but not everyone will make money in the market either, right? Or on Bitcoin or whatever it is,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. So you discovered this desire to help people sort of manage their finances, and it probably fed your OCD tendencies. So what did you do? Did you have to go back to school?
Yeah, yeah. So I actually started working. I went in through the insurance route. I started working at MetLife, and then from the insurance route, because the other thing is the reason why I went through the insurance route is because um, I lost my father when I was 19. So he left us with nothing. Like, he didn't mean to leave us with nothing. He just didn't know any better, right? We had a home that we couldn't manage. We did own like a little investment property in Elizabeth. We had a business in Jersey City that we couldn't manage, but we had no money.
What was the business?
It was a little bodega, little corner grocery store. That's what immigrants in Jersey City used to do back in the day.
Is it still there?
No, no, we got rid of it after my dad. So yeah, so I went in through the insurance world because I saw a big need for it, right? Because I went through it myself, and then from that point, I went back and studied and got licensed and all that to do investments as well. So yeah, that was about 12 years ago.
And is that when you got the job where your supervisor eventually told you that you had to work 80 hours a week?
Correct.
Okay. But you must have learned a lot there.
I did. I did. Everything that's happened, good and bad, because a lot of bad stuff happens in life, right?
Mhm.
Everything that happens in life makes you who you are today, right? So if you had taken any of those elements out, like had I not met that guy who was like, you got to work 80 hours a week, I would have never left, right? I would have just stayed there and not been who I am right now. If the horrible situation with my dad didn't happen, I would know firsthand how important all this stuff is, because I lived it very early on when most people don't go through this sort of stuff until later on in life. I was forced to go through it.
Yeah. Tell me what it was like when growing up, with your dad running the bodega, and what was life like for you?
Yeah. So my dad came here as an immigrant. He was an engineer, but it was really hard for him. There's a lot of factors that go into it, right? But it was really hard for him to have a 9 to 5 job. So he decided that he was going to buy a home. He was living the American dream from an immigrant perspective, right? He was going to buy a home. He just happened to buy a home in an area that was not very safe. And so the home that we were supposed to move in, we ended up renting. He bought this business because he once again wanted to feel like, and see, this is kind of like what I'm talking about. When sometimes I have to tell people, like, there's things that are beyond me and you need to go somewhere else, right? He always
Mhm.
wanted to feel like he had accomplished things. And I think a lot of people want to feel like that. And
Mhm.
and the fact that we take out our credit card and say charge it makes us feel like, hey, I can do this. I have this, right? I got this. And so they worked all the time. I think I have learned how to my hardworking, gene inside of me comes from my mom and dad. They used to work all the time. Like, I mean, they would leave early in the morning at 7 o'clock so they can give people coffee, so people can come in and buy coffee. And they would leave at 11 o'clock at night and try to
Wow.
make, yeah, like no joke. They were there 24/7. It was tough. I mean, I think they bought that when I was 15 years old. And so from 15 on, I was kind of on my own. I kind of raised myself, if you will. So it's been an interesting journey.
What was he doing before that
He was an engineer. But
in the States?
yep.
Oh, why did he leave that?
I guess because the job prospects were not so great at that time in the 80s for civil engineering. That's what he did.
And I think when people go into business, at least I think that the general public believes this, is that you just start, money just starts raining on you, you know?
Yeah.
And we know, because we have businesses, that you have to put an awful lot of work and effort and planning and strategy into all of that.
Yeah, I tell people, who I have a ton of clients who come to me who are unhappy with their jobs or whatever, and they say, "Okay, I really want to start my own business." And I'm like, "Great. Do you have 3 to 5 years worth saved up for, of expenses?" And the answer is usually no. Very few people have, 3 years, even a year worth of expenses sitting there, right? So if you don't have that, because if you look at the stats, majority of the businesses fail within the first 5 years, right? The people who survive the first 5 years will go on to be successful, but majority of the businesses will not. A lot of them don't even survive that.
Well, I think what I learned when I went solo, because I did it the traditional route. I also worked for somebody else, and then I went solo, and I realized truly that I was running a business. It wasn't just about practicing law. I think I sort of knew that intellectually before, but you don't really get it until you're doing it. And then you realize, it's not just about me being a good lawyer. That's not enough, because there's plenty of bad lawyers that are making money and have thriving businesses. You have to really learn all those working parts of the business and how to keep it going and make it efficient and profitable. And were you at a little bit of a head start maybe when you started your business, but having this financial background?
Um, yes and no. I mean, when I went completely on my own, I knew, like, I've always had that financial savings and all that sort of stuff. So that's always been there. So yes, I had a head start in that way. But in terms of, even to this day, I feel like we're all still learning. There are more efficient ways that I could be doing things, right? Like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like I'm
Yeah.
constantly looking for more efficient ways to run my business. Like, and there are so many tools and tricks out there that, every day I'm like, oh, I should be doing this instead of doing this, right?
Yeah.
So it's a constant learning process. But I think the biggest thing I think we all can take away from running businesses this year specifically is that we all have to be really flexible, right? You have to figure out how to make things work very quickly
Mhm.
when you're scared. I mean, when this whole pandemic thing happened, I went out on Facebook and I didn't know what was going to happen to my business, right? We didn't know. I mean, it ended up being fine, but I went out there and I said, hey, look, if you lost your job and you don't know how you're going to feed yourself, or, something's happened, reach out to me. Like, I'm doing pro bono work. So
Did people reach out to you?
yeah, they did. They did. I
Oh,
had a
that's
couple,
nice.
yeah.
And so what kind of advice do you give them? And I guess even with your wealthy people, what were they scared because of COVID?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, all the businesses were affected. I mean, they were a little, I think everyone is always fearful when you're in business, right? Is there going to be a competitor that comes and takes away your piece of the pie, if you will, right? That you have. Um, so I think everyone was scared, but I think they knew that it was going to be okay, right? Like, there was enough money there that they could sustain themselves, and I knew that too. And I was like, okay, well, if I don't make money this year, I'm okay. Life will go on, right? Next year we'll make money. Um,
Well, do you think sometimes it's just helpful to have somebody like you who has these credentials kind of look over things and just assure them that, as long as you don't go blow all of your checks on, shoes, you're going to be okay. It's just now is not the time to maybe splurge on a luxury.
Yeah, so that's exactly what, when those people reached out to me and they were like, "Oh my God, I don't have any money. What am I going to do?" And I said, "Okay, you're getting that. Most people got those checks in the mail." And I said, "Don't spend anything. Spend as little as you can. All the checks that you're getting from unemployment, from whatever it is. Some people got severance, whatever it was." I was like, Put all of that away. There's no need. There's nothing that you need. In fact, if you start cleaning out your house, and this is what I told all of them to do, start cleaning out your house, start selling stuff that you don't need, right? You're gonna realize how much you have, because I did it. You're gonna realize how much crap you have in your home that you absolutely don't need. So really, you going out there and buying another pair of whatever it is, jeans, shoes, whatever, right? Another painting or whatever, you don't need any of it, right? Like once it's there, you're like, oh no, it's cluttering up my space, right?
It's so true. And I think you don't realize how much crap you have until you have to move.
Yeah.
And you're like, why do I have this? I'm throwing this out.
Yeah,
I'm really into the minimalist people.
I am too. I'm so not a minimalist. I'm an aspiring minimalist.
Yeah, me too. One thing I do hang on to that my boyfriend hates, my books. I can't get rid of my books. I have 2 huge bookcases. They're like 3 books deep.
Do you
And
do
he
you
hates
hold
it.
on to them because you remember reading them and you like you remember that feeling that you got when you first that little light bulb went out, or do you hold on to them just because it's like something to hold on to?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have this problem with other things. It's books, and it's really awful. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I haven't even read a lot of them. There's this Japanese word. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you could Google it and find it starts with a T. There's a Japanese word for people who do that, who just collect books and don't read them.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying I haven't read them. Like I've read most of them, but there's still a lot on the shelves that I haven't read.
there's an American word for it too. Hoarders.
Hoarder. I think I like the Japanese word better. Well, hoarders will have, like garbage around the house.
Right. That show Hoarders has garbage, but there's the other sort of hoarders, right? Like I'm like that with paperwork. I'm like every single piece of paper, I'm like, oh, I may need this, right? And
Yes.
I get rid of it. I don't need it. Now I started scanning stuff. I'm like, if I really need it, I'll scan it and then, save it. But
Well, did you ever read, I think her name is Marie Kondo. Am I saying her name right? That book about the magic of tidying up, the art of tidying up, something like that. But she says in her book that you should take all of your belongings, like room by room, for instance, clothes. You take everything out of the closet, off the shelves, you put it in the middle of the floor, and you go through each individual piece and you evaluate it as though, does it bring me joy?
Yeah.
Does this one piece bring me joy? And if it does, you keep it. And that's how you decide what you're keeping and what you're getting rid of. And you can't just leave it on your shelf and say, oh, let me look at that one and see if it brings me joy. She says in the book, you have to take everything down, which, because I was like, I'm not doing that because then I got to put it all back. But I don't know. I think I get it. Because if you try, the first time you try it, it seems weird, but the books bring me joy. They do. And then there are other things I have where I'm just like, why is that still here? I don't like if that died in a fire, I don't think I would care. I wouldn't miss it,
You're right. I wouldn't even notice it, right? It's
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. You should try it.
I should. Well, this is what we can do. We can start a book club. Give us the names of all the books. We'll start a book club and we'll read all the books that you're reading. You know what I'm reading right now? It's called Good to Great. How some companies
I've heard of that.
Have you read it? Let's start a book club with that.
It's on my bookshelf though.
Is it on your bookshelf?
It was a business book that was recommended. It's a very popular business book.
Yeah, it's on the New
Do you
York.
like it?
I do. I like business though. Like it's fascinating to me to figure out why like there's in there, if you read the book, they talk about how Walgreens has done, like 10 times what like Intel or all these, tech companies that you thought did so great, and why it's done that. So that stuff is really interesting to me. But I think you should. Okay, so we're gonna start a book club. I know everyone who's listening, read that book.
I was gonna say, you're causing me anxiety. I'm waiting for you to say you need to get rid of your books. because that would send me into a tailspin.
No, I'm not telling you to get rid of your books. If you want to read them and then make a decision, is this something that I really want to remember or not, right? Because I've held on to books, from college and from all that stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like it's the feeling of, oh, I remember being in that moment, reading that, and, like the light bulb going on, like that. That's
Yeah, yeah, I'll often remember, where I was in my life when I read it, or, if it was something I read in the summer on the beach, I'll remember that. Maybe that's sort of what the attachment is. So, what are the most common kind of mistakes that you see people make with their money or their planning or what have you?
the common mistakes that people I think the biggest common mistake that people make is that they think that, they will always be making money. Money will always be there no matter what. I have to say, I think teachers and nurses are notorious for this because they're in fields where, for a teacher, for example, it's true. Unless you do something really big time screwed up, the union's going to fight for you, and you're going to keep your job, right? Same thing with nurses. Your job isn't going anywhere, so money's always going to be flowing in. But those are the people who tend to spend a lot of money, and some of it is psychological. They don't like, it's been a rough day at wherever they were, in the classroom. There was a rough day in the hospital. And so they'll buy a lot of things that they don't need because it makes them feel good because it was a rough day. So I think the biggest mistake I think people make is they feel like no matter what, there'll always be money coming in no matter what.
Well, they kind of forget that, I'm going to be old one day. I'm not going to be able to work. And unless you have passive assets, like unless you're a real estate developer who's got all this money still flowing in, that's why planning for retirement is so important, which I didn't realize until it was, I was older too.
Yeah. So a lot of those guys, so for example, teachers, right? They have pensions,
Mhm.
really good pensions, by the way, if you know any teachers or whatever. Same thing with nurses, depending on now there's less and less nurses with pensions, but years ago, they all had pensions through the hospital or whatever. So once again, they were not worried about, they felt like no matter what. I think the other mistake that people make is that they feel that in America, no matter what, you'll be taken care of, right?
Mm. Like
Which is
Social Security, but you don't even really get that much in Social Security. It's not
social.
enough to live on.
Right. And that's the biggest mistake. Most people don't know. And so when, during one of the first meetings that I have with people, on my list of things to bring with them to speak to me is a social security statement. And people are like, "What? I haven't seen one of those in like since 2006." I'm like, "Yeah, so go pull it up and, and bring it, right?" And they're like, "Why?" Because I'm like, "You need to know how much you're going to get. How much are you spending right now? How much are you going to get?" Right? And majority of the people, like, even if you look at a good social security statement, they're getting like 2600 or 3000 or whatever, right? And that's not, I mean, depending on what your expenses are, that's not a lot of money. We have
No.
clients that are spending 15,000 a month.
Is that
That's
taxable?
social security.
Yeah.
Yeah, so out of your Social Security, Medicare expenses comes out, but your medical expenses go way down because for example, if you're a business owner and you're paying for
Yeah.
medical insurance or whatever, you know how expensive it is, right?
Yes, it is.
Right. So once you turn 65, and there are people who I have a ton of clients who are like, in their late 50s who are like waiting for that magical 65 number because now instead of spending thousands and thousands of dollars, their Medicare expenses will automatically come out of Social Security.
Do you have to pay taxes, income taxes on the Social Security that you get?
Depending on how much money that you're getting, it's so if you're getting a small amount of money, like if you're under the poverty level or whatever, then the answer is no. Right.
Okay.
Most people have additional income that's coming in to Social Security, right? So most people have investment assets, for example, like they'll have an IRA that's paying them money as well. So yes, you'll have to pay money on that IRA. If it's a Roth IRA, you do not have to pay money on that because it's already been taxed, right? You don't have to pay taxes on something that's already been taxed. So this is the biggest, probably the best advice I can give everyone out there is to invest in something. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Roth, but invest in something where it's post-tax. You've already paid the taxes on it. Allow it to grow tax-free. And there's lots of different vehicles out there. If you have questions, they can reach out to me. But there's lots of different ways out there that you can put the money in, and it's deferring the taxes. So IRAs defer taxes as well. A traditional IRA or a 401k. So let's say you had a 401k at your old law firm, right? You roll that into a traditional IRA. So the traditional IRA, you're 65 years old, and now that I'm going to throw random numbers out there, that 401k that was 50,000 is now $100,000, right? So you went from 50 to, you made another 50,000. So now you have 100. You're going to pay taxes out of that at the current tax rates. We all think that tax rates will be going up from here. There's no way. I mean, we spend trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, right? Where's the government getting the money from?
Yeah. Yeah. Us.
Us, right? So what's going to happen to the tax rates?
Yeah.
It's most likely going to go up.
Is it ever advisable to liquidate any of your retirement? Because I always hear that you can take money out for certain things without penalties. I think one of those things is if you're going to make an improvement to your home. I'm not sure what the others are. And I think there were some exceptions recently because of COVID too.
Yeah, it's so people who don't plan end up taking money out of their, people who don't plan for their finances, right? People who don't save the 3 to 6 months or the year's worth if you own a business, or 5 years, hopefully, if so, some of them. So this is your backup plan. If you have nowhere else to go, you can take money out of your 401k as a loan. You can take money out of certain things. It's usually not an IRA. It's not recommended that you take money out of your IRA. There are provisions to that, but for the most part, I would say no. Don't do it unless you have to do it, right? If you have to do it and you have no other choice, well, there's your answer. You have no other choice, right? Because you didn't plan appropriately. But it's not advisable, because when you go to take money out of your IRA, for example, right, you're going to end up paying, depending on your tax bracket, anywhere from 20 to 30% to federal, right? And then your state taxes. So let's say you take out of that same example of 100,000 that I gave you, right? Let's say you take out 10,000 at current age instead of after 59 and a half. If you go to take that money out right now, instead of getting 10,000, let's say you're in the 30% tax bracket, 30% of it, 3,000 will go to the federal government. 10% will go to the, New Jersey state, right? So out of that 10,000 that you took out of your IRA or 401k, whatever it is, right? That money that you took out, you will only end up with 6,000. So you've already lost 40% of your money, right? 30 to 40%, depending on your tax bracket. Doesn't make any sense.
It's not worth that.
No. And people ask me all the time, like, I told you I work with a lot of people now who are trying to get out of debt. And they're like, well, maybe I should just take money out of here and pay my debt. And I'm like, no, it doesn't make any sense. You're losing money, right?
A lot of those people will just run up debt again too.
And that's the hardest part. We're trying to get them out of debt and keep them out of debt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's hard when you want to live like a baller.
It is.
But you don't have baller money.
You can go live like a baller at the dollar store. That's what I say.
No, I mean, that might get something out of your system, right? Because you might feel like, wow, I'm going to buy all this stuff, but it's only $1. That could, feed some psychological need to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You spend $20 and you have like 20 things. Woo!
So let me ask you a question, and this will just show how ignorant I am about this stuff. How do you make money? Do these people pay you? Like, what kind of fee do they pay you?
Yeah, great question. So I make money in different ways with different people. So for example, the clients that we are doing financial coaching for, the people who just need, who are in debt, they pay us for coaching purposes, just like you would pay any other coach, right? The people who just come to us, there are lots of people who just come to us for insurance purposes. They just want insurance. We get paid from insurance companies. There's no fee to them. People who just want to do some investments, we get paid through investment companies. We also do full financial plans for people. I actually have a client tonight. We're looking at every single aspect of her life, her insurances, her money. She wants to make sure that she has enough money to retire. So we're running an analysis for her with all the money that she has. What's the probability that she won't run out of money when she's 95 years old? That's the age that we take, because most of us will live till 95, right? So we want to make sure you have enough money no matter what happens.
And well, the women live longer, right?
Yeah. The average age for women right now is age 87. With modern science, we think it'll be soon 92. And so we plan for 95.
Well, my grandmother is 95.
Oh, see, maybe we should be planning for 121.
I don't know. We'll see.
We actually, the system does go out to age 100. So we want to make sure you have enough money, right? The last thing you want to be is like, 95 years old and saying, oh shit, I have no freaking money, right? Like, who wants to do that?
I've had a lot of coaching over the past several years, and money mindset is something that coaches talk about a lot, the ones that I work with. And, they're very careful about helping you not sort of demonize money, right? And spending. That's not always the problem. Sometimes the problem is that you're not making enough.
Absolutely.
If you want to live a certain lifestyle, they encourage you to, sit down with an Excel spreadsheet and figure out, how do I really want to live? And realistically, like, you don't need gold toilet bowls, or you don't need to live like Jay-Z, but how do you really want to live and be comfortable, and how much does that cost? And then sort of go from there and figure out, well, how can I maximize my earning capacity to do that? Is that something you work on with people?
I do. So money is a funny, and I really, one day I'm going to write a book about this. I think people have so many different perceptions of money, right? Some people think like, oh, let me just spend. I almost say like, money's like a person. What kind of relationship do you have with money, right? Like, are you abusing it? Are you using it wisely? Are you loving it?
I want to ask you, have you ever heard of that guy, Dave Ramsey?
Yes. So that's what I'm talking about. There's people who are like Dave Ramsey, militant about like saving every single dime, right? Like, and I have these guys as clients, right? Like, majority of the time we're doing like life insurance, for example, for them, right? Or disability or whatever. But they tell me like they have got this whole thing figured out. They're like eating ramen noodles. I'm like, oh my God. And I just want to be like, you don't have to live like this. Like, I understand.
But his whole thing is no debt. Like, literally no debt. He's not just talking about credit card debt. He's got this whole, I forget what he calls his program, but there's like a big Dave Ramsey program. I know someone who's doing it. I actually should ask her how that's going. But he's got this whole thing like, you pay off all your credit cards, all your student loans, your mortgage, your car, like everything, have no debt whatsoever. And one of the things he says is not to use credit cards, because he says, even if you're one of those people that says, oh, it doesn't matter, I pay off my credit card in full every month, he says you're still overspending. Because when you go to a restaurant, unless you're paying cash, it's easy to just go, oh, I'm going to get, the tomahawk chop that's $80, and, the whatever scotch. I don't drink scotch. So whatever scotch is expensive. And if you were paying cash, you probably would be less likely to do that. I think that there's some truth to that.
Yeah. So I agree. I agree with some of that, but not all of it. So for example, I agree that, I pay all my debt. Like I don't have any credit card debt. I own my cars outright. I don't own my properties outright. We could pay them off, but we don't
You're
because I like
such a
the
show
tax.
off, Gigi.
No, I'm not showing off. I'm just
I'm
saying
just
like,
kidding.
but but there's a reason why you want the properties mortgaged, right? Because you want the tax deduction. So you have to think of it from a tax perspective. Like, how is it helping you to have all of that money in property that you're living in? You're not utilizing that money to make money off of it. Because that's my thing. Like, you want to make money from the money that you have. You work so hard for your money, let your money work for you, right? And that's where I think I disagree with him. When it comes to like, I don't think you should have your properties completely paid off. I think they should be mortgaged. And so the argument comes back to me oftentimes, well, you're paying interest rate. Yes, but I'm also getting a deduction for all of this other stuff, especially the investment property, right? Like I'm able to deduct a lot of stuff as a result of that. So
And all the money that you would be dumping into the house to get the mortgage paid off, you could be putting into investments that are going to make you money. Is that the logic?
exactly.
Yeah. All right. I've used up a lot of your time and I'm very grateful. Thank you. If you could indulge me in two more questions.
Sure.
One, what's on your bucket list? What's left for you? I
Oh.
mean, you're young. You got a lot of years ahead of you, right? Till 95, maybe 100. What do you want to do with all those years?
So what's on my bucket list so there's so many different bucket lists. Remember, there's
Oh, there's more than one bucket list. Okay.
I mean, the one thing that I think both my husband and I want to do, we definitely want to travel. We wanted to travel, and then we got married and had kids soon after we got married. So traveling is definitely one of them. I really think, for me, life is all about experiences, right? At the end of the day, like the stuff that I have, like who cares? Like, my kids will have to clear out all my crap, right? We see clients having to do this right now. So none of that stuff is important to me, but it's really just I want to live life. I want to travel. In terms of like what I'd want to, how I'd want to leave the world. I really want to have financial education be a part of our school. Like I think that's so important. That's the one thing that I hope will be my legacy.
All right. And then, of course, I have to make sure that we tell everybody how they can find you if they're interested in talking to you more.
Yeah. So should I give you all my contact information? You
Do you
can.
have a website?
We do have a website. It's shantinowfinancial.com. And we are in the process of revamping it. So it will be available hopefully by the time this goes live.
All right. Well, I will make sure that we have links to your website and you can give me whatever other material you want so that people can find you. And if there's any women out there that need a little bit of help, maybe figuring out how they can buy the shoes or the house or whatever it is, reach out to Gigi. Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.